October 2021. We've typically gone away, usually around my birthday, usually to the beach. We wanted to go away as a family.
We were getting cabin fever, I think.
And yet, we have kids with anxiety, and the thought of going to the beach during the pandemic really flared our anxiety. And my son got the idea, let's go to the mountains. He found an Airbnb where we could bring our dogs. So our daughter, who loves dogs, I was extra fearful about being at a crowded beach. Was like, okay, I can bring the dogs. We'll be in the mountains. We'll be away from people.
Have our own place.
Yeah, we had our own, the Airbnb. House. And so my son found this place. It was kind of a 3-level house, and the owner lived on the bottom, and then we rented the second and the third, so that we kind of each had our own space, but we're right there together. So we go off to the mountains. The week of my birthday is the middle of October.
And that's when we like to do stuff.
Right. Yeah. So we go out to the mountains, not realizing this is fall break week. It's fall break week of the October after the start of the pandemic. And everybody decided to go to the mountains. And so some of the places we wanted to go to that Moses Cone house. It was so jammed. Packed with people, right?
Well, we couldn't even find a parking space there.
No, and so that was and I kind of wanted to go. I was eager to get out, because of the pandemic, but our daughter with anxiety was, well, both of them, but were flared up even more. Yeah. It's like, we can't do this. We're in a crowd of people, and so we had all these different emotions and thoughts going on. The people who wanted to go, the people who were like, no, there's no place to park, and this is too crowded. And yet we had fun. We
did a lot more outdoor stuff too, I think, with it. We went to the park.
Where we stayed, you could walk down a steep hill, and there was a little town. Where did we stay?
That's
Banner Elk?
No. Not Blowing Rock.
Banner Elk.
Was it? Okay.
It was a small town, and we could walk around.
North Carolina, small town.
But even our daughter didn't want to go out to the stores much. Yet we had a porch with a swing that overlooked the trees and the mountains. We did go on
a lot of hikes.
We did go on some hikes, and we got to have some time together as a family, which is what we really wanted. We did learn that never to go to the mountains, because it's also the prime in North Carolina mountains. Mid-October is the prime time for color changes, even without the pandemic. So we learned that's not the best time.
Well, we homeschool, so we try to go when we think less crowded.
Right, like at the beach, typically people are at the beach, right, in October. But
we didn't pick this one as well.
And yet we had fun despite it.
Well, hello, this is Don and Gina with Focused Healthy Family. This is podcast number 13.
And today we're going to share the second 3 interviews that we did with Anne Hanovich's podcast, Short and Sweet Parenting Tips. We've taken the interviews she did with us and put them together. Again, talking about anxiety, which relates to more than just the pandemic. And in all these episodes that we've combined here now, this is the second one we're doing, it's talking about the tools and skills that we teach in the parent communication workshops that we do.
Because we, again, believe that communication plays a very big role in anxiety, and even more so in the pandemic when we got everybody home and secluded. So, but before we do that, let's get a word from the sponsor.
That's our podcast for today. We hope you've enjoyed it. We'd like to hear from you. Make sure to leave us a comment.
And if you like what you heard today, you can learn more about our parent coaching program or join us for our next workshop at focusedhealthyfamily.com, or follow us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family,
or Instagram, Gina at Focused Healthy Family.
And remember, how you speak to your children shapes their future.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. Or you can find a link on the front page of the focusedhealthyfamily.com website.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
Coming to you live from the second story overlooking beautiful Maryland, it's Short and Sweet Parenting Tips.
Well, I'm not sure about the live part, but welcome back to our series on reducing anxiety during the pandemic with short and sweet parenting tips. So Don and Gina Grodhoff are back with us from Focused Healthy Family.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you. We enjoy this.
And we're talking about alternatives to punishment today and problem solving as a way to decrease anxiety in the home.
Yeah, because the 6 different areas are dealing with feelings, engaging cooperation, encouraging autonomy, the alternatives to punishment, praise, and freeing children from playing roles.
Oh, wow.
Those are the chapters of the book, and that's the weeks are structured to those different
I
components.
feel like each of those could be a separate episode.
Well, and that's why they're a separate class too. Each of those is a 2-hour class, because we really delve into it. And like you say, the alternatives to punishment is another one that stands out pretty bold and tends to get a little bit of resistance because it's like, well, if we don't punish them, how are they going to learn? And how are they going to? Well, that's not necessarily true.
And it's one of those things you get in that habit. Oh, the only way my child listens is when I yell and scream, then they listen. Well, what other ways can we approach this? And so it all goes back to the feelings too. We have to acknowledge children's feelings first. But some tips on dealing that is expressing what you're feeling strongly without attacking their character. It's important to use I statements rather than you. Anytime we say, you're doing this, we're pointing the finger at them, the person feels attacked and they get defensive, right? That's an important skill. Other places teach that in communicating in other environments. And so, I'm really angry when I see, a mess in the bathroom after you've taken a shower. And now I have to clean it up. So rather than you're so messy, you're a slob in the bathroom, what have you done? You're gonna have to clean the whole house now. And stating your expectations to your children. After you take a shower, I expect you to pick up your clothes, put them in the hamper, hang the towels up, right? We need to let them know what they expect. Giving them a choice.
You can clean up after the bathroom, or you can take a shower downstairs. You give them some options to it.
And the big one is problem solving. And this also, it can help in whatever particular challenge you're dealing with, but it also helps to the future. They've done something, they're losing things, they're not getting their schoolwork done on time. So you set up a time, we need to talk about this and discuss this. You don't necessarily do it right then and there. It's got to be a time where your kid is calm, not over hungry, not overtired, right? Understanding your child and what time works. And then you sit down and say, okay, this is the problem. You're not getting your schoolwork done. This is a frustration. We're going to brainstorm some solutions. And you literally take a pen and paper, or if you do it on a tablet, and write down all the suggestions. Even if your kid says something ridiculous, like, I'll just never go to school, I'll never do my homework. You literally write down, never go to school, never do my homework.
Okay.
So you're writing down your ideas and their ideas. They're feeling heard and acknowledged. If you're having trouble engaging with your child, they're very serious, you can throw a silly idea out there.
Right.
Humor
always breaks the ice, I feel like.
And so then you get this big list, and then you go back through them one at a time. And again, it's a cooperation effort. Okay, this is not going to work for this reason. They get to reject things that they don't like. And in so doing, you're teaching them problem solving skills, and you're working to resolve a current problem that you have. prevention is always so much better than dealing with the problem. So when you do have a repeated thing going on, problem solving can be used in so many areas with kids. And it's such an important skill for all of us to learn how to problem solve. We encounter it, in our lives everywhere, at work, with friends, and we don't always think about teaching that to children.
Well, and a big part in the problem solving is we take out the word but, because we'll say, well, you don't want to go to school every day, but that isn't going to work. No, what you would say there is, so your idea is you wouldn't just want to go to school at all. The problem is, or because the but negates anything before it. So if you're saying something really good about, you just negated it.
Yeah, I love you, but
yeah.
It's like, okay, you don't really love me. It takes away, just like the pointing fingers. So trying to eliminate the buts from your conversation. And the easiest way to do that is, the problem is,
the
law requires us to go to school. It's important that we learn, and these things are important. So some of it's changing the language and how you say things.
So I would like to go back to the alternatives to punishment and talk about toddlers.
Okay.
Because rationalizing with a toddler doesn't normally happen.
Right.
Just being real. So
right.
Is there a specific suggestion or alternative for someone who has toddlers who don't seem to want to respond?
Right. And again, it's all these skills, really aren't about rationalizing, especially if anyone's upset. It doesn't matter if they're a toddler or if they're 15. If they're in that, upset, having a fit, it's not the time to discuss problem solving. It's not the time to try to engage them, right? When we're in that, if you have in this state of heightened anxiety, you can't be talked down from that.
You can't just say calm down.
So you have to.
Yes. No, I hear you.
You have to have tools for reducing that anxiety, right? So a lot of these skills are for after the fact. One important thing to realize is the developmental appropriateness of different ages, and all kids come with different personalities and different learning styles that affect how they're functioning, right? So 2-year-olds, people say the terrible twos, they're always saying no. Well, they're figuring out their world and developing this new sense of independence. I always tell parents, use no as little as possible. It needs to be for danger, really, the stove is hot, running out in the street. Because if we're saying it all the time, it's one of those other things. If you tell your child, don't touch that, they're going to touch it, because your brain doesn't really hear the negative. It hears, don't think of the white elephant.
Touch it.
Right.
Yeah. And they do,
So let them know what they can do. Our older kid was a biter.
Oh yeah.
What I did for him is I took a cloth diaper and I made Bite Man. I'm not. I just made a little head out of it. Made it look like a little ghost. Put little eyes stitched on it, and it's like you can bite Man. Giving them an outlet. For that, because especially pre-verbal kids, that's their mouth. How they don't have the words to express their frustrations. They might hit or swing out. People are not for hitting, pillows are for hitting. Giving them an alternative way. They need to express. You can't just expect a 2-year-old to sit still and be quiet and do what they're told. They're figuring out the world. They can't express what they're feeling if they're sick or upset or hungry. So giving them an avenue to express that, I think, is
it's really understanding where they are developmentally a lot of times too. And I think that's important, like she was saying, because if you can understand that, then you can make some decisions from that place.
Right. And knowing what's appropriate, and kids need to run and learn and move. That's how they're learning and growing and developing, and they need an outlet for that to be able to do those things.
Well, I was just having a conversation this morning with a good friend who has a toddler, and it's kind of, like you said, you want to have the right expectations of whatever age they are. And you also want to recognize, were they doing this to be malicious? Or are they just being a 2-year-old? Or are they just being an 8-year-old? Or, do they just have, we called it busy fingers, because one of my girls, her fingers just could not sit still. So if she did not have something constructive in her fingers, she would
I called it disassemble whatever was nearby. Sometimes it was, my purse or a shawl or something, so we would say it was her busy fingers. We wouldn't say she did something wrong because I knew it wasn't an intentional destruction of other people's property.
Right. And I think with all behavior in kids, what's the need that's not being met? Sometimes kids act out because they want our attention, or that's the only way they get our attention.
Yeah.
Is when I act out, and even if it's negative attention they're getting from their parent, if that's the only attention they get, they're going to continue to get that because kids want their parents to pay attention to them. And if they're not getting positive attention, they're going to continue their behaviors to get the negative. So, always looking at what's the need. And you did it perfectly with, daughter. So she probably is a kid who needs a fidget cube. I taught my daughter, a friend taught her how to knit, and so while she's watching something, busying her hands, getting involved in that. That's a very occupational therapy, from the roots of where occupational therapy came from. So looking at what is the underlying need. It's usually kids are not being malicious to be malicious. There is some underlying need being met, or it's become a habit, or they're trying to get attention in some way. And so, what's the need here? Just like with the toddler, they're throwing a fit. Are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they overstimulated? Or are they understimulated?
Yeah.
Right? Do they need activity? Do they need quiet? Is there too much going on? It really comes back to looking at, what is the underlying need that needs to be met?
Well, she used to, and I think I did it once or twice, but with our oldest daughter, when she got mad and she couldn't express herself, she would get a paper out and put it in front of her and give her a crayon and say, "Show me what it feels like." And she would just go crazy on that paper. And then, she would just go, "Wow, you're really mad. Is there more to that? Come on, And it would really change, she got it out somehow.
Kids need an outlet to be mad. We don't want them to hit us or hit their siblings or, destroy things. They need an outlet for that. Our youngest, crumple paper, just get a bunch of scrap paper, crumple it up and throw it in the trash can. They need those outlets for those things. We can't just expect them. Don't do that. Don't throw things at the wall,
Well, and not making it acceptable for them to vent that, just then they bury it and it eats them away inside.
And it can come out years later when which I see all the time.
Yeah, you work with adult clients and all this stuff that's gotten buried, and it can come out physically in our health, heart disease and other things. It's internalized, right? Or just depression, other different things.
It becomes a bubble, a balloon underwater. It can only stay there so long before it comes back up.
That's a good visual.
I feel like sometimes I'm just a whack-a-mole facilitator, I bring down that anxiety, that one pops up, bring down that one pops, So
right. Thank you so much, Dawn and Gina.
Yeah.
We appreciate the opportunity to talk about these things. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we love to talk about it, so thanks.
There is just so much more good advice you all have to share. I know we have a couple more episodes worth in this series.
Right.
Yes.
Parents, I guarantee it will be worth your while to come back next week. But for now, that is it for this short and sweet parenting tip. Fresh ideas in bite-sized portions.
Focus Healthy Family audience, stay tuned for part 5 coming up next. And now part 5, managing roles and expectations.
Short and sweet parenting tips here, and we're continuing our series on reducing anxiety during COVID. If you've missed one of our previous episodes on the topic, so far we've discussed how respect, communication, and alternatives to punishment can be used to reduce anxiety around your home. This week we're discussing how putting roles or labels on our children can lead to anxiety now and even into their adulthood. Husband and wife team Dawn and Gina Grodhoff join us again this week. Dawn is an EFT tapping practitioner and Gina's an occupational therapist, so they combine their skills to help families not only change behaviors, but also minimize anxiety to increase the health of the entire family. Who doesn't want that, right? Dawn also hosts a podcast called Invisible Wheelchair, where he unlocks the hidden mind of OCD and anxiety and advocates for positive recovery. So, Today we're talking about another way to reduce anxiety, right?
Well, another big one is the roles. We
Yes.
don't realize that we put roles and labels on our children. Oh, she's the smart one. Oh, he's the troublemaker, right? And how much that can affect their anxiety. A lot of times we're doing it in fun. We don't mean it. We don't realize comparing children to each other. And yet this really can have a big impact on our kids. And, the parents put all those expectations on them, and you have to do it this way. And it doesn't matter. You got to be a doctor. You got to be a lawyer, putting them in those positions, and how much angst obviously it caused. But it can happen in really small ways and not even realizing it. This is the smart kid. This, even by calling, oh, you're the smart one. The other kids, then all of a sudden they're the dumb ones. If they hear their brother being labeled that way, oh, I'm not that smart.
Yeah, I did an episode on sibling rivalry, and that was a huge one. Is never do I compare the girls. Ever, never. And I coach grandparents and anybody who's over, like, even benign, like you said, even totally benign things.
Yeah, and a lot of times you don't realize, how it's being done, and just how it doesn't have to be an outward label, but how we're interacting with them, the underlying message there.
Yeah.
Well, and the authors of the How to Talk books also did one on siblings without rivalry.
Oh, cool.
They have a whole collection.
And it's really the themes. It's
the same principles, but they really apply it to siblings, like you talked about. And that is a big part of it, is not comparing children. And, it's hard not to do it. You do it, they're babies, and this one rolled over at 6 months and this one rolled over, it's how we pay attention to things. We see the contrast, we see the differences, and yet over time we wind up doing that without even realizing it, like you said.
And it's a point of interest. You're like, oh, you had more hair when you were a toddler. I mean, we don't understand how it can be defining.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't realize we say things that don't think that means much to them, but especially a young child, they hear something, and who knows what their brain has turned it into. Oh, I have thin, sad hair or whatever. I don't have, my hair's thin, and they grow up with this self-conscious idea that, they're not pretty or whatever.
Or they never liked their hair. I've always hated my hair ever since fill in the blank. So.
Yeah. Well, and then there's the encouraging autonomy. And I think an overall theme of that idea of autonomy, if you can teach your kids to problem solve, if you can teach your kids to make their own decisions, what it helps is in the future, when you're not around, if you're making all the decisions for them and they're counting on somebody else to make the decision for them.
You want them to do what you tell them to do,
Yeah. When they're older, they can be influenced sometimes by not so good groups,
because talking teenagers,
they believe what those people say versus themselves.
Yeah. Can you define autonomy before we move on? I know you gave some examples, but would you give just a informal definition of autonomy?
Sure. Helping children to learn to make independent decisions. And so it's a sense of them having the confidence to be able to make choices, to be able to go through a struggle, and to be able to handle it and move forward. We say we want our kids to be independent, but you don't push them away to make them independent. That doesn't.
Oh, okay.
They need to feel accepted with their feelings. They need to feel respected. They need to feel in a safe environment. And so it's sort of an ongoing process, as they get older, making bigger and bigger choices, but just giving them options, like at breakfast. Do you want this cereal or this cereal? Do you want pancakes or toast? And then they're deciding. Because like Don said, down the road, if you just want your kids to do what you tell them and follow the rules, well, they're going to go out there in the world. They're going to be with teenagers, and their teenage friends are going to say, oh, you need to do this. Well, they're used to being told what to do. So it's easy to follow someone else when, especially different personalities. Some kids have a harder time making choices. So if somebody else is making them for them, engaging them to find solutions. They ask you a question. Why is the sky blue? Rather than giving them an answer. Well, what do you think? It's facilitating their own problem solving, to come up with answers, to seek other resources, to encourage them to, look it up online or ask someone that's an expert. Your child has questions about a dog, a pet, or something that you don't know much about, right? Encouraging them to look to other sources. Well, your aunt's a dog trainer. Why don't you talk to her? So that they're growing a sense of how to function in the world and being able to make decisions.
And how and where to find answers to questions.
Right. And it's a slow process. It's not like, okay, you're 18 now, you're independent, you're on your own. If they haven't gained these skills, I mean, maybe they're going to succeed or they're going to fail. Kids go off to college, and in high school they've been told what to do, and it's never been structured. And in college you have so much more freedom, and they fail that first semester because no one's standing over them, making them come to class, having punishments if they don't have an internal sense of, it's not something you switches on when you turn 18.
Well, and to me, the older a person is when they learn that lesson, the more at stake. So if they can learn that lesson when they're 7 or 8, there's less at stake.
Right. Making a choice of, okay, jumping off the slide or not, even something small, getting hurt and bruised, that's an okay mistake, right? If it's not serious injury, they need to be able to make those small mistakes, just like you said, because less is at stake than when they're older.
And allowing them to deal with the natural consequences and not being their safety net.
Right.
Because you're not always going to be there. As they get older, they're going to hopefully be on their own and be able to handle it.
Well, and I feel like, and it goes back to personality, especially in this generation, I feel like learning from other people's mistakes is not really something that kids learn. They learn from their own mistakes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, none of us, do, learn from my mistakes. I messed this up or whatever. It's not, what we tell people. They're learning from making their own mistakes, from having their own opportunity to do things.
Experiences, yeah.
Yeah, their own experiences, exactly.
One other thought for parents, for the parent side of it, and attention, that one of the things in the book, that they do a lot of cartoon ways of showing it in the book, and one of them, the father's sitting there watching TV and the son's talking to him. He goes, yeah, I can hear you, but he's watching TV. The real thing is to turn the dang thing off, or just turn around and focus on them, get down, even get down on their level, really put your real attention to them, not just kind of, whatever, okay, that'll be fine kind of thing,
What I saw happen, especially when our kids were young, is, we'd be working on the computer or doing something. Hey, come play with me. Hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? In a minute. And then the minute doesn't happen. So they're like, okay, that didn't work. So I'm going to flip out and draw on the wall. That worked. That got my attention. That turned me away from my computer.
Right. We all do that with our kids.
One of the things we teach in there is one, how you respond to it. So, like you were saying, at the computer, you're doing something. You don't just, push away, say, in a minute. You say, right at this moment, I've got to finish this project. But as soon as I'm done, I will, you might even start out by saying, I really want to have the time with you. I got to finish this. Can we meet, can we do it in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or whatever the time is? And then literally setting a timer or something like that to remind you, so that you follow up with.
Right, because sometimes you're in the middle of something and you can't be there, but just letting your child know, depending on their age, right? When they're really young, you really need to stop. But, I want to hear more of what you're telling me. I can't take the time right now. But
or I don't have the mind space sometimes.
Right, or sometimes you want to tell me all about this game, but my brain is tired from work or whatever. And, I'll be able to listen better if you tell me tomorrow, our youngest can go on.
So maybe you can go write it down,
and follow up on that. Say, let's set a time to do that. You remind me, or, make a little reminder, set a timer or something so that you follow through on it too, because that's important.
I like to say that in our kids' economy, the parent's attention is gold.
Yeah.
Whether it's positive or negative.
Yes, exactly.
And maybe even a little deeper that it's about love. Attention is just a part of love to me, because I was just working with a client just recently, and for a young person, and we're doing the work and we're digging down into it. And I think it was about attention, but then I said something about, it's really about love. And she started crying. Because it was really a deeper need just for knowing the love, and I think
the outward expression.
And if all a child gets from a parent is negative attention, then they think that's love.
Yeah.
Oh dear, and talk about generational baggage.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And trust me, I come from a generation of very big baggage. So.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I feel like no matter how hard I try, I'm still going to pass on plenty of baggage to my kids. And the other truth is, they're going to be okay anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, next week we'll have the final installment of the interview with Dawn and Gina. We'll talk about engaging your kids' senses and how you can use these techniques to reset your kiddo. I hope you enjoyed this week's short and sweet parenting tip, fresh ideas in bite-sized portions.
Focused Healthy Family audience, stay tuned for part 6, coming up next. And now part 6, engaging the senses.
Short and sweet parenting tips here, and we're covering the last installment of ways to reduce anxiety in your home. Today you'll hear lots of ideas on how to leverage your kids' 5 senses to neutralize a stressful atmosphere in your home and help reset and relax your kids. I think you'll have fun with this one. Dawn and Gina Grodhoff join us from Focused Healthy Family again to talk about a need with our kids that isn't always being met right now.
Kids need to run and learn and move. That's how they're learning and growing and developing, and they need an outlet for that.
I've worked with kids and I've seen a lot more sensory issues. And so if you can understand the sensory issues, what they're going through, and there's a lot of it going on right now. And I think it's just a lot of the way things are going in our society that they're not getting to do the movements and the things they need to do.
Exercise, outside time, and
grounding time, things like jazz.
And the physical movement is so important in development. As we know, if we sit all the time, we're going to gain weight. Our bodies need movement, and some kids need more than others. Our oldest was kind of a calm kid. He didn't need as much movement and activity as our youngest, who literally takes breaks every hour or so, being online with her friends to run around. But it's important that those things be incorporated because it really can help reduce anxiety, especially, young children jumping on a trampoline, running up and down. I used to do wheelbarrow all the time where they put their hands on the floor and you lift their legs up to walk. That proprioceptive input is calming to the system.
Used to do burrito too, remember?
Oh yeah, and the having like a blanket and you roll your kid up like a burrito. The calming activity, and different things are calming for different children depending on their sensory. If they don't like it, then that's not going to calm their system. But there's lots of things. Sometimes their system just needs a chance to calm down, or they need an outlet. They need to be able to, if you're having to do school at home and they can't sit still, well, get up and move around. It's how we take in information from the world is being processed through our senses. And so if things are not happening smoothly, it causes disruption. I'd love to talk more about that.
Yeah, I would love to, when we do another interview for the next season on mental health, I would love to do an episode on sensory processing. Dawn, you mentioned grounding when you were talking about being active. That's a term I'm not familiar with, unless you're talking about taking away their phone and making them stay in the house.
That's true.
That goes back to the punishment. We don't want to go there. No, some people call it earthing or grounding. I use it even in my practice, even with adults, but it's taking your shoes off and going outside into the dirt and getting connected again with the earth. And it sounds a little out there, but the earth produces negative ions, and we produce both, but we produce more of the positive ions. Well, in connecting with that, we blend those two together, which can be a real balancing part for us. So I know we both have done it. I've taken both of my kids out when they just were, and I had to kind of like pull them out there, but I took them out with their bare feet and got them just to sit and put their feet. You get into the dirt, into the earth, and it really has a lot of health benefits to it. And that grounding is one of them. I know with our youngest one, within 5 minutes, she would go from this to giggling and laughing and running, because I'd have her just run around in the front yard.
It neutralizes them, right?
Yes. Huh. So I think it's a cool way to begin the day for kids, is to get them outside, get them barefoot. I mean, not in the middle of winter, but I just meditation work talks about that, and kind of
centering and connecting with the earth. So it kind of fits in with that. And when you can get outside and, be out in nature, it helps our brains. It helps so many different things.
Yeah, science supports just being outdoors, walking outdoors and being part of nature as being so mentally healing. And so,
I mean, when I talk to my clients, I talk about meditation and as far as a way of calming anxiety. But I don't look at meditation as this guru on the mountain doing the kind of thing. It's whatever you lose yourself into. For me, I like music, and certain musics can really just take me into, and it focuses back into yourself, and so it can be jogging, it can be walking. You like to write?
Writing, yeah. I journal in the morning.
Journaling, yeah.
It grounds me. It helps center me to
focus, I guess.
Yeah, to focus, because it's, doing something that you enjoy, so your attention is tuned into that.
You don't necessarily have to sit still to do it. It's not
I love that.
It's about, like I say, whatever loses yourself. Like I say, I have people that I know, clients that have jog, and when they jog, they everything around them kind of gets put aside. They can just really focus on what's going on for them.
Yeah, and another great tool with kids is mindfulness. And our therapist actually initiated this with our youngest, with her therapist. Just for a minute, focus on one thing. Maybe it's a piece of food, and you look at it and you eat it slowly and you really taste it, and really focus on it for a minute. Or if you're outside, let's just be quiet and then and listen to all the things we can hear. And then we can talk about it. For a real young kid, it might not be a minute, it might be 15 seconds. But let's just tune in and pay attention. Let's just really think about what this food feels like in our mouth and what's the taste and the texture. Or, let's stop and just listen. And there's just so many different ways to incorporate kind of a mindfulness in each day. That's, such an important skill, and it can do with kids of any age.
And then there's going through the senses. Right, that's a mindfulness where you
right. What am I hearing? What am I feeling? What am I seeing? Yeah,
and smelling and
right.
Well, then another means of relaxation or getting out of anxiety is going through your body and tensing up parts of your body one at a time.
Progressive muscle relaxation.
Yes,
there you go.
Yeah, so you focus on each muscle group and you tense it, and slowly you're releasing it. So in order to really relax, you scrunch and tense your shoulders up, and then you can relax them. So the progressive relaxation is a great tool.
And that works with kids just as well as adults.
Yeah. I think mine was from the feet up, because I remember doing my head.
Yeah. Okay.
And you scrunch your face and you open your eyes really wide, and
Yeah, I think I learned that too when I first learned it.
And you can take it to any intensity. You can go down to a finger, or you can do more generalized. I
was gonna say, with like a 2 or 3 year old. Okay, we're just gonna tense up our whole body and squeeze our fists, right?
Right.
Gonna let it all go, right? Because they're not going to be able to differentiate.
Yes, for sure.
Parts of the body.
Well, and also for little kids with breathing. There's a couple different ways of doing some good deep breathing. Gina does the one with blowing out the candles. Picture a big birthday cake with a lot of candles. You got to blow them all out.
We talk about taking deep breaths in and blowing out. If a kid's really anxious and they're hyperventilating, it's hard to focus on breathing in and out. But if you tell a kid to blow out, then they're going to be forced to breathe in. It's just a natural occurrence. And so you literally can take some candles and tell the child, blow out the candles, right? They're going to go, and they're forcing the air out their mouth, and then they're naturally going to breathe back in. So it's one way to get them into a calmer breathing pattern.
And the one I do is I'll have them do raspberries. So you breathe in.
Right. And that's a sensory thing too, I think.
Well, and I usually collapse to the floor as I'm doing it, and they giggle and laugh. So they're getting really two things out of it. They're getting the breathing part out of it, but they're getting the laughter, which relaxes them too. So and
it's silly. Young kids are like,
that's so fun, and
and laughter releases endorphins too.
Yeah, I know. I know hugging, helps to release endorphins and calms their anxiety, and I've even read, I forget the number of seconds that a hug is and how it changes the chemicals in our brain. And so a prolonged hug can really have a calming, relaxing effect on our body. And I went to a conference, it's been a number of years ago. I want to say it was speech therapists, but they specialize. They were laughter therapists, and the importance of it and how it affects our body, and even the forced laughter. Forcing yourself to laugh, it's kind of like making yourself smile. It's changing the dynamics in your brain and functioning. And how therapeutic it can be. Now we're gonna have to go look that up some more because I know there is science behind it, and it is fascinating.
And I do know inserting silliness or humor in a tense situation often will just kind of, change the chemistry and take the wind out of whoever's coming at you, just to do something silly or say something silly, kind of like you said when you were brainstorming, make a silly idea or whatever.
Right, because we take things so seriously. And someone said to me once, think, is this going to matter 5 years from now? Like, especially with your kids, they wrote on the wall, is this really going to matter in 5 years? Like, how serious and how important is this? And I found a Facebook picture of our youngest child. Gosh, she was maybe 4, pouring her own cereal. And pretty much poured the whole box of it out and overflowing onto the table. And I found this picture. I'm like, oh, this is great. How do you handle this? Right. And being our third child, she's much younger than our other two. I found it, funny and amusing. And I think I said, are you trying to, build a sandcastle? I said something light and lively with it, and yet so many times we're quick to jump on it, get angry when in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter.
That completes this series on reducing anxiety at home. Even if kids are going back to school, you can still improve the environment of stress in your house. So in this series, we talked about respect, communication, alternatives to punishment, problem solving, and unknowingly plugging your kids into specific roles. If you missed one of these topics, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that episode. Parents of any age kids will benefit from these tips, and most of the advice is helpful to us grown-ups too.
That's our podcast for today. We hope you've enjoyed it. We'd like to hear from you. Make sure to leave us a comment.
And if you like what you heard today, you can learn more about our parent coaching program or join us for our next workshop at focusedhealthyfamily.com, or follow us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family,
or Instagram, Gina at Focused Healthy Family.
And remember, how you speak to your children shapes their future.